What's going on, everyone? Ghost here just to really recap the A's season and just some final thoughts because, it's the end of baseball and I thought I should just briefly talk about this. So, going into the season, this is a major disappointing year. Not because of course, losing the record, but there were expectations, and there were expectations to at least contend. Not necessarily win the AL West, but contend. This was supposed to be the year. You had a bunch of. Basically, the theory was we depend on great pitching, and then the hitting would come in its ways, just streaky hitting, average hitting, because we had the guys who were capable of hitting. Guys like Josh Willingham and Hideki Matsui were capable of doing that, along with Coco Crisp. Had some veterans with a little bit of youth mix, and that's what Billy Beane was hoping to bring to the table. Unfortunately, things did not pan out, and here are some explanations. The first thing was the injuries. The fact that Brett Anderson got injured in the middle of the year, and he's going to be out for most of next year, if not all of next year, that really hurts, because Brett Anderson, I think, I consider him to be one of the better pitchers of our staff, one of the best, actually. Brett Anderson is the one I like a lot, and it hurts. Dallas Braden, of course, was hurt as well. Another guy, he had a nice sub-3 ERA, decent ERA, and once again, he was out for the year as well, early in the season. That hurt. So guys like Guillermo Moscoso had to be coming in, as well as Graham Godfrey had to put in. Of course, Brandon McCarthy had a very respectable season. I'll give him that. Trevor Cahill did not pan out as well this year. It's very actually disappointing that he was supposed to be one of the better pitchers of our staff, but he wasn't doing that. Gio Gonzalez was the one consistent we had, but I'll give him that. And of course, Tyson Ross was doing all right when he came in, but he got hurt for the year as well. Another depressing story. Just starting pitchers were out, and we had to depend on some of the no-name guys like Moscoso to play, and it hurt. But those guys did okay. It wasn't all their fault. The bullpen had its issues. Specifically, Fuentes was very disappointing for us. Balfour, for the most part, did his job. I'll give Balfour a lot of credit. Bailey, when he was healthy, was good. He had some moments where he couldn't do the non-save situations, but when it came to save situations, Bailey did his job. It was just horrible that Fuentes and a little bit of the other middle relief like Wirtz, even Ziegler at times did not do so well before he was traded. But the other thing that didn't pan out, of course, was the hitting. The first half of the year was awful, just awful hitting. No one was panning out, and I just don't even get why. It was horrible. I couldn't describe how horrible the hitting was to begin the year, while the pitching started well. And then later, right in about May, Bob Guerin, of course, another reason to blame is his tactics. He was putting guys in at the wrong times. He didn't know how to use the lineup or use it properly, I think, at times. That was another big thing. The locker room was all against him. They couldn't stand him. They couldn't stand playing for him. And on the field, it obviously showed. I mean, his tactics, if you looked at that series against the San Francisco Giants at AT&T Park, we should have at least won a game or won 2 of those 3 games there, but no. Bob Guerin happens to put in the wrong guy at the wrong time, using double switches at the wrong point. His tactics, and even using the order, was awful. So we enter Bob Melvin. He has an awful situation to step in. The players suddenly responded well right out of the gate. They started well with him. Sure, the season, you could argue he had a losing record at the end, but he didn't have his players necessarily, or guys that, is just on the short run. But he had players that were playing for him, and that's something that's very important, the leadership. The locker room does like Melvin, and I'm fine with him getting the extension that he's got, because of course, he didn't have the talent on the roster. But in the second half, this is the thing that didn't make sense, was that the hitting finally came through. Josh Willingham and Hideki Matsui were all hitting well. Jemiah Weeks came in the second half, the Miami Hurricane, first-round pick we got out of Miami. Jemiah Weeks turned out to be very good for us this year once he was called up and came in. You could say we waited too long to put him in. But, you can't blame him because Mark Ellis at the time was there. What can you do? You can't blame him for doing that. But yeah, the second half, the A's offense was a lot better. I don't know if you could put the stats for the second half of the season, but the A's should have been ranked right in the middle or right near at one point they were near the top to start the second half. And like the end of July, it was ridiculous how we were hitting. They were responding to their coach as well, but then all of a sudden, the second half, the pitching got a little bit worse. It's like the pitching couldn't click when the hitting could, and vice versa in the first half. It just didn't make sense how that couldn't happen. And said before, key players were hurt, and it was awful. The other thing that was annoying was the defense. I don't know why this team had so many errors, especially in the first half. I mean, Kuzminov was brought on this team initially for defensive purposes, and he was failing, and goodness, he failed at the bat, which is why he was traded, sent down and traded, which was an embarrassment. Scott Sizemore proved to be serviceable. Yeah, he's not great, but definitely was an upgrade. You could tell he made some impact in some games, variously. Pennington was serviceable. Of course, Jamal Weeks was the star. You know, Brandon Allen, the guy we picked up in exchange for Ziegler, turned out to be all right at first, and then he started slumping down the stretch. But at least the guy can make contact with the ball. The guy surely was making decent contact when I was watching him. And then Josh Willingham in the second half, along with Matsui, were hitting very well in the second half. If you look at like slugging percentages, they were looking good there. Willingham almost had 30 home runs, almost had 100 RBIs this season, despite his average. He had a very productive year for us. Crisp, stolen bases. I liked how aggressive the A's were at stealing the bases. That was good to see. But Kurt Suzuki had a major down year. The hitting, some of those guys just weren't living up to hype, and especially the prospects. This is the most painful part of all right here is Michael Taylor and Chris Carter, two guys that, the A's have invested a lot, especially Michael Taylor. Y'all wondered where that Matt Holliday trade ended up, what we traded him for. Mainly it's Michael Taylor. We put in a lot of stock and investment in this guy, and right now he's not panning out. As of right now, he didn't do so well in AAA, which is just why it took him forever to be called up. He wasn't doing so well. He did so-so near the end, not that great. But Chris Carter, a major disappointment. I'm very depressed. He was one of the 6 guys we got in the Dan Herron trade, and Carter was supposed to be with a steal, one of the steals of that trade. He did well until we got to like AAA, and then suddenly he gets into the majors. He goes 0 for 33 or something like that in 2010, and I was depressed there. And this time he had a kind of a short notice call-up. He didn't really do that much. Guys like Cardenas was more productive. Sogard, they seem to be a lot more productive than him. Going into next year, if there is a next year, of course there should be, because the players' union is really strong. I don't see a lockout happening despite the CBA expiring in December. But this team is going to really need to address its offense once again. There needs to be a few bullpen signing changes, a little bit of the offense, especially the outfield. You might go with the homegrown route. I think I could see the A's doing that, especially Jai Miller getting a look. But there needs to be 1 or 2 signings or trades that should happen to the outfield, and a little bit of maybe the first base as well. We stocked up some first basemen here, so we might see what happens there. But they need to stock up well. So lastly, the A's, health is a big factor. They need to make some signings and make some changes on offense, because we're very frustrated. And the reason why the general manager is not active is because they're waiting for the San Jose move. Obviously, Lou Wolf wants to move this team out of Oakland, the ballpark situation. And he's waiting for the decision of Bud Selig. He's watched the presentations. They're waiting forever. And because of Selig not making a decision, that's what's putting the A's on hold. Billy Beane is not spending because Lou Wolf doesn't want him to spend, because Bud Selig has not made the decision on the stadium idea. If Bud Selig says no, they'll probably do some moves. If Bud Selig says yes, he'll do some moves. But they're trying to get the team to move to San Jose, and personally, I'm not in favor of that. I'd like to see it in Oakland. There's some room in Jack London Square and Victory Court, but I don't see it happening. If San Jose is the only option to prevent the team from moving out of state or out of the Bay Area for that matter, then I guess San Jose might be the only option. But Selig, I need a decision now. I'm really sick that Selig is taking this time to wait, and that's why the fans aren't showing up. They're frustrated at the ownership. Lou Wolf, arguably one of the worst owners in baseball right now. So, but we'll see what happens. The pitching, some parts of the pitching was a bright spot, especially Gio Gonzalez. But it's just still just a major disappointment for the year. I'm just gonna go in the rest without at any expectations. Looking back at my preseason predictions, I'm happy to be wrong because I had Boston and the Giants in the World Series, and I'm proud to be wrong there. Uh, didn't want either of those, of course, in the postseason at all, and I got my wish. I had Detroit winning the AL Central, and then, of course, had the Yankees in the playoffs, predictable. Rangers in the playoffs, predictable. Had the Rays contending, but I didn't think they'd pull it off, especially in the second half. Great way to end the season, by the way. National League, looking back, Giants didn't win, of course, which is good. Had the Reds in the Central, which failed, but Brewers did a good job. The Cardinals, great second half. And, of course, I had the Phillies and Braves in the playoffs, which the Braves failed in the last month of the season as well. Phillies definitely looking just like they were expected to be with the starting pitching staff they got. So, good luck to all the teams there. I didn't see Arizona winning it. I didn't. I mean, I thought if there was a team contending, maybe you'd see the Rockies, but the fact that the Arizona came out of nowhere from worst to first, I got to give my props to Kirk Gibson and company out there for coming up with a team with an okay bullpen and some streaky hitting. They a lot better than I thought. That's who I'm rooting for the rest of the way. Typically I root for the winner of the NL West as long as they don't rhyme with the word clients. So. Yes, we'll see you guys later. Go A's as always, and that'll be the last to hear from me about the A's till next year. See you guys later.